Story 1. Tariffs initiated the Great Depression of the 1930s. Additionally, the tariffs were so poorly conceived that they were applied to an Antarctic island that is inhabited only by penguins and seals. He also accused New Zealand of imposing a 20% tariff on the United States. He arrived at this figure using the goods and services tax, which is a sales tax paid by the customer and not charged to the country of origin. New Zealand has maintained minimal tariffs of about 2% and has had no subsidies since the early 2000s. Trump has been labeled as uneducated by his economics professor in college. Story 2. Will it work for them? It is going to ruin many people's lives, but for the administration, that is acceptable because they do not care about people. They care about themselves, money, and corporations. Beyond that, this is how wars begin. They just want to create chaos to get the attention they feel they deserve. Everything is going to get more expensive and quickly. Story 3. Will what work out for them? He hasn't even set a goal with these tariffs. There is no success state for them to achieve. Story 4. Tariffs are a tool that must be used carefully. They require planning and a set goal for specific use cases. Tariffs are not blunt instruments. They will not work effectively in that manner. Story 5. No, he just motivated those countries to collaborate while simultaneously resisting and not conforming to the United States. They are behaving as if manufacturing can be moved overnight. Story 6. It will probably work out for them. The Trump administration has made it no secret that they are trying to cause a recession. I assume the reason they want that is so they can buy up all the assets during the recession and become even wealthier by the time things start to bounce back. You know what? I think it may work out for them. Who knows how much suffering and death will be caused by it? I hope the people can and will rise up to stop it. But at least right now, at 3 a.m., I'm feeling pessimistic and I fear it will work out for them. Story 7. Read the room. This is going to be a disaster for almost everyone. Watch as the United States comes begging back to the international community after the next election, and the rest of the world says no thanks. Story 8. In Oz, we have 2 uninhabited islands, except for penguins. I'm not sure how they feel about it. They have been suspiciously quiet. Story 9. As an outside observer who will also be affected, this is a terrible idea. There have been very few occasions in history when Republicans have controlled all branches of the United States government and few instances when they have implemented large tariffs on imports. One significant time was during the Great Depression. Your economy is moving in the wrong direction. Tax the wealthy and support those in need. That approach works. Currently, you are benefiting the wealthy and taxing those who are struggling. This situation will not last long. Story 10. I am looking forward to working in a new factory that is going to be built. I cannot wait to sit by the conveyor belt. Story 11. This is a flawed idea. It will only benefit those who have accumulated cash or money market funds, waiting to invest after a market downturn, as well as the Democratic Party in the upcoming elections. Otherwise, it will cause widespread harm to the general public. Story 12. They are trying to ruin and destroy the country, so yes, it will work out for them. Many small people and businesses will go bankrupt so the wealthy 1% can buy up their properties cheaply. Story 13. It is disappointing to be an American right now. The fact that about half the population actively supports this situation only deepens the sense of despair. Story 14. Just to give an example of how tariffs worked under Trump's first presidency, the government had to pay $28 billion to compensate American farmers growing soybeans for China, which imposed reciprocal tariffs. Any revenue generated by tariffs is offset by lost growth and compensation schemes. Story 15. If Brexit has taught me anything, it's that things are resilient. Life will be a little tougher for most people, catastrophic for a few, but overall, life will go on and this situation will be the new normal. Do not expect the American right to acknowledge their problems and realize that this may not have been a good idea. Any plan that relies on them seeing the truth is doomed to fail. It is also important to remember that this will hurt non-Americans more than Americans in the short term. Story 16. I believe the administration is effectively taxing the American population through tariffs, presenting it as a measure against foreign nations. These broad tariffs operate like a hidden federal consumption tax, similar to a value-added tax. Although many tariffs are symbolic, the real economic target remains China. Politically, this strategy allows the administration to address fiscal deficits and domestic economic weakness without openly advocating unpopular direct taxes or handouts to subsidize domestic production. Ultimately, these tariffs work regressively, disproportionately impacting lower and middle-income households, possibly to offset the gap left by previous tax cuts. Will it work out? No. Story 17. The last two times the United States used tariffs, in 1828 and 1930, it led to a depression. Why would it be different this time? Is it because of Trump? Story 18. I believe it is all a bluff, a negotiation tactic. He is trying to appear tough so that he can ease up later and appear to be helping countries. I think it will backfire. Story 19. Why is politics focused on everyone's opinions? There are experts who say it is unwise and could lead to a recession. Additionally, he isn't using accurate data. Story 20. They did not work out last time he was in power. What makes people think this time will be any different? Story 21. Some people's lives and businesses will be affected, both in the United States and abroad, but for most, the impact will be minimal. The question is, will this strategy be effective? It seems the goal of the tariffs is to reduce trade deficits, as the figures involved are based on the 2024 trade deficits. Will these tariffs decrease the trade deficit? Perhaps. Americans may buy fewer imported goods and more domestic products, such as choosing bread over rice, or they may delay purchases, like keeping their cars for a longer period. However, many countries will impose reciprocal tariffs, which could lead to a decline in exports. While it is possible that the trade deficit could decrease, the average American may see little benefit and will ultimately bear the cost. Domestic manufacturing companies might benefit, especially those that add significant value to raw materials, such as the pharmaceutical industry, which may simply increase margins. Story 22. Trump tariffs appear to be aimed at increasing domestic production. When U.S. manufacturers spent decades outsourcing their manufacturing and procurement due to lower costs, there is no greater incentive to bring manufacturing back than tariffs. Unfortunately, the manufacturer's products are only more expensive in the U.S. market, while prices remain the same elsewhere. If Trump wanted the tariffs to be effective, they should be calculated separately for different product lines. Story 23. This is the reason many in the United States refuse to give up their firearms. But where are they now? It seems it was just all talk all along. Story 24. It's okay. He is apparently going to compensate for them by lifting sanctions and negotiating a significant trade agreement with Russia. Story 25. A few wealthy individuals want to purchase America at a low cost, which may be considered an effective strategy. If you are affluent and ready for a recession, it could be one of the best opportunities for you. Story 26. He doesn't care about tariffs. He wants quid pro quo deals from United States companies and foreign countries. He uses direct leverage on them to extort personal gain. The tariffs are a joke. The percentages can be calculated by the trade imbalance with these countries. It's a fascist power grab he sells as fighting for the small man, claiming they gave us bad deals and now he gets that money back for you, stating this will fix the economy. No, it won't. It will cost every American more to purchase foreign products or United States products that depend on foreign resources. Story 27. As a Russian, I am relieved that we didn't appear on the list, especially considering even Antarctica received tariffs. Story 28. I believe this will weaken America, causing world trade to prioritize America last in sales and distribution. Global trade will shift to countries with free trade agreements, and I would not be surprised if China surpasses America as the world's largest economy, which has been a long-term goal for them. Story 29. Work for whom? Trump promised his supporters tariffs and has delivered on that promise. Will his supporters realize that Trump's plan is negatively affecting them? We will have to see, but evidence to date suggests they may not recognize it. Will Trump blame the inevitable impacts on someone else? Almost certainly. The value of U.S. stocks will drop. The marginally wealthy will need to close the gap between their income and expenditures, leading them to sell their stocks. The very wealthy will take advantage of the lower stock prices. The markets may recover, possibly when Trump decides to remove the tariffs. The wealthy will remain wealthy, while the marginally wealthy will become poorer. Story 30. It will lead to a recession. All of his wealthy friends will be able to purchase real estate, businesses, and farmland, while those of us with limited resources will have to rely on them to survive. Story 31. Tariffs aren't a magic money button like the current United States government thinks. Nor does the target country pay those tariffs. American citizens pay the price. If a business in the United States wants to buy a good that has tariffs placed on it, they pay the tariff and then they naturally raise prices, thus the consumers suffer. The idea on paper is tariffs make it undesirable to purchase goods from that nation, thus protecting a nation's vital industry. But it doesn't really work that way in practice. The inverse can occur, making it less incentivizing to buy foreign goods and instead buy domestic goods. This is an appealing concept, but the United States isn't capable of this level of supply compared to a nation like China. So, in actuality, tariffs will make most things more expensive for the average American, which may be the intent. This could also shatter the United States economy, as foreign nations and traders may no longer desire to buy American goods, since they become extremely expensive. Again, on paper that is the goal, to protect domestic industries, but the United States economy could also suffer greatly. A notable example thus far is weapons. Europe has begun seeking domestic alternatives as American weaponry and military goods become more costly. This is not something the United States wants. They have enough military equipment to supply their own military and have been known for selling weapons to foreign allies. Now, foreign allies may not buy American. Tariffs can be used properly, but they require actual strategic implementation, not just brute force. This could also weaken the United States dollar. Less international trade with the United States would naturally weaken the dollar. Additionally, tariffs had a significant impact on the Great Depression. While they were not the root cause, they were a contributing factor. Story 32. It might result in creating the worst recession in U.S. history, educating Americans about the consequences of electing incompetent leaders. Story 33. Sure, they might move some production to the United States, but that doesn't really solve anything. The products produced in the United States will be more costly per unit compared to those from India or Pakistan. So how will they manage the increased prices for consumers? If it is expensive, no one will buy and, well, then it fails. Story 34. It will be a significant success. My primary criterion for determining the success of a policy is the number of words it will generate in future history books. I anticipate there will be pages dedicated to this topic, along with images of the consequences, where students will compare Hoovervilles and Trump towns, as well as sections discussing the challenges of translating Trump speeches into English. Additionally, there may be textbooks explaining how Biden impacted the economy by imposing tariffs. Story 35. What do I think? I am watching a combination of risk and Sid Meier's civilization happening before my very eyes, and the pause button is broken. Will it work out? Let's wait and see. Story 36. If your best friend lets you down, will it work? You will be more cautious about working with him. Canada made the right decision. Respond in kind to such people. Now he is thinking twice. Consider boycotting products from the United States. Story 37. We had the best economy in the world under President Biden, and now we don't after 3 months. The man harmed casinos. Wake up, conservatives and those who think we will be okay without some kind of action. People are being disappeared without due process. This is a situation reminiscent of Ba Sing Se. Story 38. No, of course not. There is no rationale or evidence for them working. They will temporarily crash the stock market. Trump will retract his position, and then the stock will rise again. Then he will come up with another outlandish scheme. Story 39. He said his goal with the tariffs is to encourage foreign companies and manufacturers to move their headquarters to the United States, especially car manufacturers, so that they are exempt from the tariffs. That's not how it works. Firstly, I doubt any manufacturers would seriously abandon the free world market just to sell in the United States without tariffs. Secondly, even if they were to relocate, all the parts would still be manufactured in other countries, so the tariffs would still apply to those. He is completely out of touch with reality. He is the type of person who cries until they get what they want. I realize that comparison may have been insulting to children, and I apologize. Story 40. He set tariffs on all of our allies but not on Russia and North Korea. Does that give you a hopeful feeling for the future? Story 41. We are not economists, and we do not have an unbiased opinion. Many people commenting are young individuals with limited life experience, historical knowledge, or reasoning beyond what their preferred media presents. This applies to those in favor of or against these tariffs. While I would not take any claims here as entirely accurate, I also would not dismiss them completely. We will see. However, this is not a place to gain knowledge. It primarily serves as a platform to express frustrations about the politician you have been calling a dictator for 8 years. Story 42. They are terribly applied by someone who has no understanding of their purpose. We are heading for disaster. Story 43. Hyperinflation will impact everyone except the wealthy. This is likely one of the worst actions he could take during this period of rebuilding after COVID-19. Story 44. Always keep in mind who the audience truly is. In Donald Trump's case, it's the people backing him. It's only his opponents who are doing the fact-checking, while his supporters do not care. He rushes forward, and by the time someone has debunked something, his goal is already achieved. Emotionally triggered supporters. He keeps the narrative simple, broad without any nuances, easily repeatable. It doesn't matter that other countries are responding in kind. He escalated tensions to show who is in charge. Retaliatory tariffs? He calls them reciprocal tariffs, spinning the narrative to suggest they started it, see? They are unreasonable. And we are not going to stand for that any longer. Reasonably, business owners and importers know that yes, the tariffs make it harder for other countries to sell. However, it's mainly because, down the line, the American consumer has to pay a lot more for these products. They bought these products because they were generally cheaper than American-made products. The benefits that Trump describes, such as bringing jobs back to the United States or attracting foreign investment, might be somewhat true over a decade. But the direct result? Product costs will be much higher, leading to inflation, job loss, and people going hungry. But that's not the point of his story. Countries retaliating and him escalating the tariffs look strong in the eyes of his supporters. He appears right, as if they are trying to break us. The numbers he presents in relation to what they do to us do not matter. Inevitably, when the crowd eventually becomes disenchanted as day-to-day lives decline, he will reverse the tariffs and say, "We finally negotiated fair tariffs, and they were only at the table because they were afraid of how we acted, and we acted strong." It's not about facts and common sense. It's about emotion and rallying against the rest of the world who treated us poorly and unjustly. And for that, the tariffs work just fine. Story 45, well, obviously not. Because now just about everyone will impose counter tariffs on the United States as a response. The United States is only hurting itself. Even if you ask an AI language model, it will tell you this will likely backfire on the United States. The likelihood of this benefiting the United States in the long term is also quite low. It may bolster some markets, but the costs will outweigh those benefits. If I were you, I would pay very close attention to exactly what kind of businesses will benefit from this. Someone always does. Then, see if there is any connection to Trump. Story 46. By them, you mean the wealthy who are damaging the economy to create a subservient workforce and cause a stock market crash so they can purchase everything at reduced prices, allowing them to become even wealthier when they drop tariffs and the economy rebounds? Yes, it will. Story 47. The tariffs on Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador will enable New England coffee growers to thrive. If there are no internal competitors, it is simply a tax that benefits no one. This is the largest tax increase in history, and it will disproportionately affect the poorest in order to give tax breaks to billionaires, all while harming the economy. Story 48. My experience is that during most presidencies, the other side often claims that the world is ending with the opposing party in charge. Yet we seem to get through each administration, and our net worths continue to rise. It will be interesting to see how it unfolds. It will also be interesting to see if those who criticize these changes will ever acknowledge their success. Either way, the government has been very active. Usually, we do not see this much activity occur so quickly. Story 49. Yes, it will be catastrophic, but Trump will just blame someone else like Biden, and America will accept it. Story 50. Trump is the epitome of an idiot. He doesn't actually understand what a tariff is or how it works. He mistakenly thinks it means other countries pay the United States more money to import goods, and that's it. What he doesn't understand, since he is a poor businessman who else bankrupts a casino, is that the importing country simply raises their prices to cover the tariff, making those goods only more expensive for people buying them in the United States. Story 51. The ending already seems apparent, at least to some of us. Whether the former president is trying to tank the economy so his wealthy backers can buy everything at discounted prices, or if he's simply engaging in another narcissistic rampage against a world that slighted him, the average American will inevitably be the one footing the bill. The only real question is how large the bill will be, which depends entirely on the average American. Because let's face it, no one in the millionaire, billionaire, or political class will do anything to stop him. Story 52. I can't help but think that if Trump had actually completed his second term, much of the chaos we are witnessing would not be occurring because the circumstances would not be in place, and he would not have had a platform or supporter base for any future terms. Address the issue before it escalates. Story 53. You know those charts showing the military budget for the United States is much larger than that of other countries combined? Well, imagine the person you were relying on for protection decided they wanted things from you. In the United Kingdom, I believe the need to rely on the United States for defense is definitely a flawed plan. Story 54. The situation is so extreme that it is fascinating. Nothing good will come from it. United States purchasing power will decline. The only positive aspect is that it has united many countries in the European Union and Asia, which is somewhat historical. Either everything will dissolve when counter-tariffs are implemented, or the former president will gradually create a lower income class in the United States, worsening poverty while bringing some production back and trapping these disadvantaged people in factory-style conditions akin to those in developing countries. However, I doubt that will happen. A destabilized United States is more likely, leading to protests, class conflict, and possibly even violence. It is tragic. Story 55. The world must decide whether tariffs are beneficial or detrimental. I can see the United States increasing tariffs on a reciprocal basis. If they have been charged tariffs or import duties and have willingly agreed to that, they are, in fact, importing with zero tariffs or low rates in comparison. Therefore, they should negotiate to reduce tariffs on U.S. goods. China will suffer the most, so they may not be in a position to import themselves. Story 56. It's interesting that he hasn't imposed tariffs on Russia. With his calculations and their own trade data, he should have implemented about a 42% tariff, considering the $3 billion in imports from Russia and $526 million in exports to Russia in 2024. I wonder why they have escaped without any penalties. Story 57. I think he is imposing the tariffs to watch the chaos unfold, then swoop back in later like, behold, I fixed the thing I broke. It's like setting your own house on fire just to go viral for putting it out. Story 58. As some economists have pointed out, the method used to calculate the tariffs was one of the most illogical approaches possible. The chart presented during the press conference suggested it displayed tariff rates on U.S. products in other countries. However, it did not convey that information. It was primarily calculated by taking the current trade deficit of those countries, dividing it by the dollar value of exports to the U.S. to estimate the claimed foreign tariffs, and then having that amount to arrive at the reciprocal tariffs that would be charged. The issue here is that such a calculation adversely affects American consumers. It imposes the highest tariffs on countries that supply significant amounts of raw materials and parts to the U.S., often because those materials are not readily available domestically, and the parts cannot be manufactured in sufficient quantities at the required cost. It is akin to a local grocery store raising prices, especially on items that are purchased most frequently. Story 59. Tariffs will raise prices for U.S. citizens, making the long-term situation less competitive. However, he is investing in votes in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for the next election. Story 60. Does it matter? He will just declare victory, and his associates will follow the plan while he plays with his building blocks. Story 61. They should have sent him to Guantanamo Bay when they had the chance for treason and leaking state secrets. They missed that opportunity, and now the majority of the country will suffer, leaving the nation in a much worse position than when he took over. Story 62. The tariffs have significantly impacted my family's restaurant. We import specialty ingredients from China, and our food costs increased so much that we had to revamp our entire menu. Our regular customers understood, but we lost about 20% of our clientele. Story 63. It will work out for Trump and other multimillionaires and billionaires. The average person, however, will suffer. Supporters will continue to defend it even when they face financial difficulties and hardship. Story 64. If corporations were not so focused on maintaining their profit margins, they would reverse the outsourcing they have done in past decades and invest in American factories and jobs. Story 65. If by them you mean the American people or American industry, then the answer is no. However, if you mean Donald Trump and his associates short-selling on the back of a stock market crash and profiting significantly, then yes. Story 66. The real villains here are Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan. They have the president's ear. Why didn't they stop him? Story 67. Many people will suffer, but there is a lack of concern. Countries will make some concessions to avoid issues. In a tit-for-tat scenario, I believe everyone will do their best not to lose. Story 68. It will do as he intends, which is damage the stock market so it becomes cheaper for him and his associates to buy assets. At the same time, American businesses are able to charge customers more because all foreign products are now significantly more expensive, which benefits American industry owners. He is repeating what he did in his first term, harming regular people to benefit the wealthiest. Will this work out for the United States or Americans in general? No. It is a basic principle in economics that protectionism, such as tariffs and import bans, leads to lower outputs for everyone and should only be applied in specific situations, such as when there is an oversupply of cheap Spanish oranges that Floridian farmers cannot compete with due to adverse weather. There is a rationale for raising the price of Spanish oranges using tariffs so that domestic farmers can survive the influx and continue to grow oranges when the market stabilizes. Citizens bear the cost of the tariffs, but they also benefit from a domestic supply of oranges that could have been lost, making it generally worthwhile. Story 69. Every country should impose tariffs on the United States. This could result in significant financial losses for the country. It might lead to a Great Depression in the United States and hopefully prompt citizens to recognize that their government is the issue. However, considering the knowledge and research capabilities of American citizens, particularly within the Republican voting group, it could potentially lead to military actions and escalate into a world conflict similar to the situation in Germany before World War II. Story 70. It will work out. It is the largest tax increase ever imposed on the United States. It will significantly hurt the people and make them angry. If he manages to deflect the anger away from himself and towards China and Europe, I do not know. It depends on how well they explain it on certain news outlets. No tax on Russia suggests that the United States and Russia are close allies, as long as the current leadership remains in power. Story 71. I believe it is all part of the plan. Do not forget that Nazism was not popular during the Roaring Twenties. It became popular during the Great Depression. Fascists need difficult times to promote their extreme ideas. Supporters of the Make America Great Again movement will continue to blame the Democrats for everything. Story 72. I believe tariffs have merit, but the implementation of them lacks direction. This approach can lead to disastrous consequences. Story 73. These tariffs are likely to create a worldwide economic crisis. There is no scenario in which they could be advantageous for the United States and its citizens. The extent of the crisis is difficult to determine, but trade wars, like real wars, result in significant losses for everyone involved. Story 74. It will plunge the world economy into a recession, during which the wealthy will acquire even more assets at discounted prices. while ordinary people endure significant hardship. Story 75. I hear about how tariffs fueled the Great Depression. Let's not forget that the Great Depression was a worldwide depression and a cause of World War II. Trump is doing more to start World War III than President Zelensky. Story 76. It will work out very well for the wealthy. Collapse the economy, lower share prices, buy everything at a discount, and reverse some changes to restore the economy. It is a tactic for transferring wealth. Story 77. Aussie chiming in to say that the news coverage here has taken a tone of quietly mocking this. I just heard a radio interview with someone from the beef industry who said, "We don't know the exact impact yet, but we don't think it's going to be a major one. Actually, we're still trying to understand why the former president imposed 10% tariffs on Australia, except for Norfolk Island, which has a 29% tariff." Never heard of Norfolk Island? Don't blame you. Not much happens there. It's a tiny place in the Pacific, and I'm not sure it even exports anything. We asked the White House why Norfolk has a 29% tariff, and the answer has been no answer. They don't know. Are you feeling good about your president right now? Are you doing okay? Story 78. It all depends on how you define them. Will it work out for the vast majority of Americans, their trading partners, and the world economy as a whole? No. Will it work out for the handful of capitalists and Russian oligarchs? Absolutely. Story 79. He wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States, which means making it more expensive for American companies to manufacture overseas, hence the tariffs. It may work out in the end, but there will be a long period of hardship for the American people. Story 80. How do you all live with constant panic and predictions of doom? Isn't it exhausting? I'm speaking about the individuals in the comments. Story 81. Might just be distractions. Tariffs on imported cars? Which one? Just take a ride through Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Hyundai, Honda, Toyota, all manufactured in the good old USA. Story 82. It has been proven that tariffs are similar to communism. On paper, they appear beneficial, but in practice, they do not work. Story 83. It will harm some parts of our economy while improving others. In the area of manufacturing, it will create a boom in jobs, but it will increase costs in other sectors. I will wait and see, but I think it is being exaggerated by the media. Story 84. The end result of products being made in America will mean two things. 1. The price of those products will have to increase significantly. The wages employees make will have to decrease. One of the main reasons products are made in Mexico or China is that labor and material costs are very low. This is easy to achieve when earning 5 cents an hour qualifies you for the middle class. Story 85. Define workout. Tariffs will negatively impact the countries to which Trump imposes them, leading to decreased sales. They will also harm Americans by increasing prices. If you bet that the stock market and dollar would decline, you likely made a significant profit. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if Trump's financial policies are entirely focused on manipulating the stock market to profit his wealthy associates. Story 86. Markets rely on stability. This is immense instability. Things will be challenging for an extended period. Many services are no longer feasible here, and we cannot offer competitive compensation to maintain them. As a result, these services will vanish. Countries will impose sanctions on us, and we will lose the ability to engage in friendly discussions regarding tariffs. Vladimir Putin did not face tariffs, while Volodymyr Zelensky did. When Zelensky seeks a deal, we will make Putin appear as a commendable ally. We are undergoing significant changes. Story 87. It will harm people who are not wealthy, which seems to be the primary goal of Republicans, aside from increasing their own wealth. Story 88. Maybe in 10 years, the average people in the United States and the rest of the world will not fare well, affecting Americans for the next 50. Story 89. I imagine tariffs will benefit some individuals, but not for the majority of Americans who work and pay taxes. Story 90. If this works, it will contradict every piece of economic wisdom we have as a culture. Is there an argument to be made that targeted, thoughtful tariffs could have improved the domestic economy while simultaneously punishing our enemies? I think so. That's not what he's doing. He opted for the extreme solution when it wasn't even necessary. Story 91. No, it will be an epic failure. While I am confident it will generate profit for the top 5%, for most people it means loss and deprivation in various ways. We all know this is just Donald Trump continuing to spread false narratives to match the hate and lies he expresses daily. Ultimately, he is doing everything possible to continue to divide so he and his associates can tighten their grip on power. It is a matter of when, not if, he will remove most tariffs and claim victory while blaming the Democrats and the broader world for the inevitable recession that is now close at hand. Still, at least the Russians were spared the impact of Liberation Day. Story 92. A global depression larger than the Great Depression is approaching. Why? So that Trump and his wealthy associates can purchase stocks at low prices. Then he will cancel the tariffs and profit significantly. However, it does not work that way, as they will soon discover. Story 93. Hubris is the ultimate downfall. The world economy will flow around the United States as it becomes more isolated. No one wants to conduct serious business with a ketamine addict. Story 94. If the goal is to increase manufacturing in this country, it is a challenging endeavor and likely not a completely realistic objective. However, this is what is currently occurring, so let us observe. Story 95. No, of course not. When applied to this extent, it damages economies because consumers bear the cost, and small and medium-sized enterprises downsize or exit the market. It is fairly basic. The only individuals who will benefit are those with capital who are prepared for the changes. Trump can only solve problems by creating them first, which is why we experience a daily cycle of chaos. Story 96. The US dollar is going to zero regardless, but this will take us there a lot faster. Bitcoin fixes this. I went from being minimally invested in Bitcoin to it making up the largest part of my investment portfolio because it increased significantly. I sold and diversified, and with the current macroeconomic climate, I am once again a Bitcoin maximalist. I keep approximately $150,000 in fiat currency for company holdings, emergency savings, and liquid assets. Everything else goes into self-custody Bitcoin. Story 97. Work to funnel money to a select few while devastating most citizens and causing permanent damage to the economy? Yes. Story 98. America is becoming an isolationist state, which could lead to the US dollar being abandoned by many nations in favor of euros or Bitcoin. Story 99. His goal is to destroy the country so it can never be rebuilt and embezzle as much as possible in the process. If you want to know whether I think he will be successful, imagine what would happen if he vanished tomorrow. What would conservatives do if he left? How far down the chain of succession do you have to go before you find someone who doesn't want to burn everything down? Story 100. It will not work out for American consumers if that is what you are asking. Expect a 25% increase in price for most items. Story 101. The best analysis I saw was the joy the orange clown gets from having the world hanging on his every word. It's the oxygen he breathes. I hope his isolationist policies lead to countries ignoring the United States and making trade deals with each other. Story 102. I believe this is the economic pain and temporary hardship Elon was referencing during the election. The part he neglected to mention is how devastating it will be and how they will all profit from it. Story 103. Yes, it will work out for them, referring to Trump and his associates, who will exploit the declining state of the American economy for mere cents on the dollar. Story 104. People believe they are foolish, but they have a strategy. There is a reason for their actions. They disrupt the markets, and being wealthier than ever, they can acquire many assets at a low cost. This also distracts people from everything else they are doing. Story 105. The Russians who were intended to benefit most? Yes, absolutely, it will work out great for them to have everyone else engage in a trade war that raises prices, making the sanctions on them weaker by default. Story 106. 10% tariffs aren't something to cry over. It's better than the 25%. Trump is right to implement tariffs as he aims to make America a powerhouse of manufacturing again. Anyone who disagrees is blinded by biased media and is likely damaging Tesla's interests. Story 107. They will have near-term and long-term effects. Near-term. 1. Countries will worry and get upset, but many will look for ways to avoid negative impacts, so they may offer to purchase more of our goods, thus increasing our exports and revenues, and hopefully mitigating some of the tariffs. Companies, such as Apple and a South Korean chip manufacturer, have already pledged to build manufacturing capacity in the United States. Consumer prices will increase initially, as many exporting companies will not absorb the cost increases and will pass them on to consumers. Long-term. 1. Trade relations will normalize. Nations that can adjust or negotiate reduced tariffs will benefit from increased exports to the United States. Those that cannot will likely experience a decline and may feel enough economic pressure to negotiate later on. Companies that pledge to increase manufacturing in the United States will have done so. This may not reduce consumer prices, but it will increase domestic employment, benefiting construction companies and workers. Whether there will be a net benefit remains to be seen. Story 108. They are a significant move, that is for sure. He has imposed a 10% tax on nearly all imports and increased it further for several countries. 34% on China, 20% on the European Union, and so on. The goal is to boost U.S. manufacturing and address trade imbalances, which I understand, though it is a blunt approach. It is one of the most substantial trade moves in decades. Will it work out? It is hard to say. On one hand, it might kickstart some factories here and bring a few jobs back, which could benefit certain towns. However, the downside is also real. Prices are likely to increase, affecting everyday items like groceries and technology, impacting regular people like us. Some experts I have read about warn that it could slow the economy or provoke retaliation from other countries, potentially nudging us toward a recession. Others believe it is a tough love strategy that could lead to better trade deals in the future. It is a gamble that could either pay off significantly or have the opposite effect. Story 109. It will work out for them because they work for the government, which is the recipient of the tariff. As a result, they make more money. Story 110. It will all depend on the Democrats, who right now seem determined to sabotage another policy and then blame it on Trump. It is what they have always done, and their continual, repetitive, and instinctive manner incites the ignorant to violent behavior. Story 111. Some statements from the administration suggest that he is using them to lower tariffs against the United States globally, which could be effective. Some of the rhetoric resembles Trump's views on tariffs. However, tariffs and isolationism ultimately make everyone poorer and goods more expensive. Story 112. I believe Trump intends to short sell the stock market, make a significant profit, buy numerous stocks at a low price, and then wait for the market to recover. I also do not think the stock market will recover before his death. The United States has lost billions in global business that is not returning. Story 113. Another day, another post about Trump's latest order that will receive numerous knee-jerk responses and possibly 3 thoughtful upvoted answers. Congratulations to the original poster on their internet points. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.